I am going to give this 1 second for our live streams to catch up and connect. And I think we should be all set. So welcome back, everybody, to another dVIN Wine Wednesday. I am Jana, co-founder of dVIN Labs and Club dVIN, your certified wine geek and host for today. Just a quick blurb. dVIN Labs gives every bottle a secure digital passport that proves where it came from and how it's been stored. For Chateau, that means fewer fakes and fairer allocations. And for collectors, it means buying with confidence, easier resale, and real connections to top estates. So the bottom line, what we do is basically we're just building for better proof, better access, and better value with the tech quietly working in the background. Let's get into today's episode because this is one that I have been so excited about for a long time. We have a very special guest today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest. Welcome, Arnaud de Laforcade, Chief Financial Officer and Commercial Director of the legendary Château Cheval Blanc. Welcome.
Hello, Jana. Hello, everybody.
Hey, did I pronounce your name right? Because I'm Canadian, but my French is not good.
Okay, mine is okay.
I hope so. I hope so. All right. Welcome, Arnaud. Welcome to the show. We kind of have a tradition here at dVIN. We have to have a glass of wine while we do these sessions. So do you have a glass of wine?
I do.
Okay.
It's a wine I know pretty well because it's ours. I'm sorry, it's not very original.
You're killing me. It's not very original, he says as he sips on a glass of Cheval Blanc. Nice life, Arnaud. All right, well, cheers. We can start off with this.
Cheers.
Cheers. What vintage are you drinking?
2020, 5 years old.
Okay. All right, and we're going to talk about why that is a very interesting vintage and relevant to today as we move on. But second question, first as always, do you have a glass of wine? And second question, where are you right now? I assume.
I am in something that is pretty new in Cheval Blanc, which is a sort of Zoom video conference room. We didn't have this facility for almost 2 centuries, so it's almost the inauguration. Nevertheless, the map that's on my back dates back to 1539 almost, so we are still short-term, long-term, modern and traditional.
Okay. All right. Zoom conference room. Look at this. We are so modern. It's probably not what the builders of the chateau envisioned for that space originally, but
No.
pretty good.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
But what's important in this kind of estates is to dance on your 2 feet. What should never change and what must change continuously in order for the estate and most of it for the wine to remain state of the art or as much as we can. We don't want to lose our soul. We don't want to lose where we come from because that's what people want to drink and what we want to produce. But on the other hand, we absolutely need to keep being modern and this is probably one proof of it.
Yeah. Gosh, do you know what? There's something about France. Honestly, this is like everything that you say sounds so poetic. Even when you speak English, it's like dancing on the 2 feet and the modern and you're knocking this out of the park already, Arnaud. Okay, so you're sitting in the chateau. Let's just, for anyone who's watching this, who surely has heard of the legendary Château Cheval Blanc in Bordeaux, but we are in Right Bank, Bordeaux, in Saint-Émilion. And so can you just give us a little geography lesson, put Cheval Blanc on the map for first-time viewers? So what's around you and how does that border location show up in the glass?
Yes, with pleasure. And of course, as everybody in the wine world knows, this is absolutely key to define your identity. So thank you for asking me this first question. Geographically, as you said, we are on the right bank of Bordeaux, which is the northern and eastern part of Bordeaux. So slightly more remote from the ocean than our friends and competitors in the Médoc. The right bank is well known mostly for 2 appellations, which are Pomerol, which we border, and Saint-Émilion, which we belong to. Nevertheless, a large part of this right bank, particularly around the village of Saint-Émilion, is based on limestone, which is the remainder from the sea, because long time ago, the sea used to cover the whole southwest of France for millenniums and millenniums, and it has sort of let fall on the seafloor some dead fish, some seashell, and that, together with the pressure applied by the water, has created limestone, chalk, in other words. And Saint-Émilion is well known for that. Whereas Cheval Blanc is much closer to Pomerol. Our nearest neighbor are Pétrus, l'Évangile, Vieux Château Certan, La Conseillante, very nice fellows, but all from Pomerol, because Cheval Blanc is the most northern estate of Saint-Émilion. And as opposed to many of our peers and friends in Saint-Émilion, which are much more traditional and illustrative from Saint-Émilion, small growers of Merlot on this limestone I was talking you about, Cheval Blanc is a larger grower, mostly planted in Cabernet Franc on clay. So that makes three fundamental differences between the traditional Saint-Émilion, which are incredible wines, and Cheval Blanc, which is also probably among the incredible wines. But we produce a touch more since the foundation of the estate. And the beauty of that is that we are based on clay, as I was telling you, because we are in the former valley of the Dordogne River. And on top of this clay, on one single piece of land, one single estate, we've got different proportions of gravel, clay itself, and sand. On all the 56 plots, the soil is different.
Wow.
And that makes the beauty of this estate. It's a sort of miracle.
It's a mosaic.
Yeah, exactly. I brought you a map. This is more old school than very modern. I can't put it on the screen, but just so you know.
Hold it up a little closer.
This part of the map represents the soil, and this part of the map represents, of course, the grape varieties. And even if you can't deep dive, you see the mosaic you were just talking about, Jana, because all the brown plots are full of stones brought here by the rivers. All the gray plots are full of clay, and all the yellow plots, a touch in the north and a touch here, are a small bed of sand on top of the clay. So, of course, we don't make the same wine on each of these plots. If we were in Burgundy, if Cheval Blanc was in Burgundy, there could probably have 80 different producers with 15 Premier Cru and 5 Grand Cru, whereas we are in Bordeaux. So the eventual destiny of all these 56 different plots are to be blended. That's the main difference between the two regions.
Incredible. Yeah, of course. But now, okay, can you give me like a sensory picture of how gravel versus clay, for example, translates to perfume and texture in the glass?
Of course, and that's very important. To sum it up briefly, clay gives the vines a continuous supply of water, because clay can trap the water when it rains. For example, in the spring of 2020 vintage, the one that I'm sipping with you, in the spring we had a good share of water. And then we had a very, very dry month of July and August. So when the rain does big rain and then big drought, in fact, the clay catches all this rain, stores it, and releases it when the atmosphere gets more and more dry. So what the vines actually receive from their roots is not big rain and big drought. It's small rain and small drought. So on the clay subsoil, which we have on every single plot, we have this sort of water stock that is available when it gets too dry. And in Bordeaux, oceanic weather conditions, particularly with the global warming that we are measuring vintage after vintage, this is key, absolutely. And then on the gravelly plots, of course, there's more heat, there's more natural drainage, the gravel that are really on top of the earth can capture some of the heat in the day and release it gently as radiators during the nights. And it's an early ripening kind of soil. So it can be very demanding for the youngest vines if their roots don't go down to the clay. But once the vines are deeply rooted and still have access to water, it's an excellent kind of soil. It gives a form of backbone, a great structure to the vines. Mm-hmm. Whereas when it's only clay, it's all around, all about sweetness and sphericity, and also a great depth. And then we get a large share of the perfume part from the sand plots, because it's not deep sand, it's a touch of sand on top of clay. So on the wettest vintages, they struggle a little bit more, but on the dry vintages, they provide a lot of flowery perfume. So we get the backbone from the gravel, we get the flesh from the clay, and we get the perfume from the sand, more or less.
Okay. Does that also mean that you're better positioned from a soil perspective? And also, you mentioned, of course, that you're planting a lot of Cabernet Franc. Does this mean that you're better positioned to handle climate change as the years are getting hotter and the vintages are getting drier with that clay as well to hold on to the moisture? Does that mean you're better positioned for climate change?
Of course, it does help, and to a great extent. We are not frightened by the future. Nevertheless, even with clay and the subsoil we have, we absolutely feel that, and that buckles up with what I was telling you earlier. We need to adapt continuously. And it's not because you are on clay with Cabernet Franc and Merlot that you can afford to do nothing. You absolutely need to change your practices agronomically, because you are aiming for producing the same wine under different weather conditions. Mm-hmm. So you need not only to be able to train the vines to not ripen too early. If you want a proper ripening of both the aromatics, the acidity and the sugar and the tannins, if you want the three ripening criteria to keep on being aligned under different weather conditions, you need to rethink and doubt and modernize your agronomical practices to a great extent. Mm-hmm. For example, when I started in Cheval Blanc 15 years ago, there was zero weed in the vineyard. It was pure soil. Mm-hmm. We never used any herbicides, even in the 70s or the 80s, but we went there with the tractors and with the manual rakes in order to get away every weed, because we were considering them as competitors for the access to water. Mm-hmm. Rather, now we maintain and seed and keep a continuous and total cover crop on the whole estate. So it's almost an opposite practice. And the two were right. It's just that we don't use the two tools under the same weather conditions.
Interesting. What kind of cover crops are you using?
It's a sort of seed cocktail. Mm. And every single plant that we seed has a particular asset or use. We use a lot of clover, radish, linden, hay, mustard, and there's another one that I'm probably forgetting. Some of them are digging the soil, some of them are capturing nitrogen and putting it back in the soil. Some of them, like hay, make sure that we can still come with the tractors when it's needed without destroying and eroding or squeezing the soil too much. And each of them is also, let's not forget that, an extremely efficient vertical drain. So anytime we get water, it doesn't go away on the surface, it goes down in the soil and gets trapped in the clay.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that's smart. Okay, all right. So I know it was a big topic when it happened, and I don't want to go too deep into it because I feel like the wine world, or everybody knows. You stepped away from the Saint-Émilion classification, and I wanted to know, just so that our kind of new to wine audience can understand why you did that. But what what made you make that decision, and why did it make sense for Cheval Blanc?
It's a question of convictions, because the Saint-Émilion classification is very particular, because it classifies the plots, not the chateau, the plots. Each plot of Cheval Blanc used to be first classified growth A. So it classifies the potential of the terroir on a given piece of land, which means if we buy the neighbor which is not classified, we cannot mix the wines. It's about pieces of land, just like Burgundy. But this classification since 1954 is supposed to be reshuffled, redone every 10 years.
Yeah.
Which in itself is a little bit paradoxal, because the quality of soil doesn't change every 10 years. But nevertheless, it classified our friends from Château Ozone and Château Cheval Blanc on top of the scale since the very beginning. And then more than a dozen first classified growth B with a little bit more movement. And then another 50 classified growth. In 2012, this classification regulation has changed to a large extent, because mostly because the syndicate, the sort of union, was a little bit frightened about only having Ozone and Cheval Blanc on top. And they wanted to have more, not only more growth, but more bottles put on the market as first classified growth, also in order to compete with the Médoc, which you can definitely understand. But in order to make this classification more free and more agile, they put in the criteria much more questions and boxes to tick, which is getting away from soil quality and vine management, which is now only 30% of the criteria, and putting much more additions of strategy, communication, pricing, how much do you travel, how much do we see your bottles in movies, what is your hosting capacity, and so on, which are all quite important. Also, what's your policy on social networks? Do you have a lot of followers, and so on? All of this is not dirty, but to us, it's a question of management, not a question of classification. So we wanted to stick to where am I? How do I manage my vineyard? Period. And to stick to this, we convinced the owning families that we were better off than in, which is not very happy. It felt the right decision.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm most interested in what's in the glass, the quality of the vineyards and the winemaking, and the quality of the wine. But I actually asked you that because we were talking about this, cover crops in the vineyards and things like that, and having to adapt to climate change. And so I wanted to just ask you that, because to come full circle, my next question is, what freedom did that unlock in how you farm, blend, and communicate the wine today?
Absolutely zero.
Really? That's what I wanted you to say.
The fact that we are out of the classification, the only freedom it gives us is focus on our daily job rather than spending one full year filling that big of a file in order to apply for the next classification. Apart from that, it did not change anything, in good or in bad. It doesn't make us more desirable or more well-known. It doesn't make us less desirable or less renowned. We still compete on the basis of wine quality, and we still dedicate 99% of our time on that. It didn't change that much.
Well, you made headlines. Anyway.
Yes, to some extent, in the very small Mondovino. Let's be honest.
Okay, well, this is our world, so I think it's a very important world. Okay, so for people who are new to Cheval, what does Cabernet Franc contribute to what they're actually tasting in the glass? If someone is thinking, let me just clarify. If somebody is thinking, I understand Bordeaux. I understand the difference between tasting a right bank and a left bank. And with right bank, you have a lot more Merlot. So Cabernet Franc being particularly being a particular focus for Cheval Blanc, what does that contribute to what they're actually tasting in the glass?
Yeah, it's a as you say, it's a not even just a focus, but it's a sheer part of our DNA. And Cheval Blanc wouldn't be Cheval Blanc without 50 or 55% of Cabernet Franc in the vineyard. In the blend, it can vary much more. We don't pay too much attention to the proportion of grape varieties in each blend. But in the vineyard, we want to have more than half of it planted in Cabernet Franc. It's an extremely demanding grape variety. If it doesn't get constant but limited access to water, it blocks its ripening. It doesn't ripen properly. And when it doesn't ripen properly, it's awful. As far as Merlot is concerned, Merlot is a more elastic and plastic grape variety, and the right bank of Bordeaux is a good proof of that, because some of us might like it very early, very crisp, with still a lot of freshness, and some of us also prefer Merlot when it's full of plum, sun bath, and generosity. So the same plot of Merlot can be harvested on the 10th of September by Cheval Blanc and would be harvested on the 10th of October by other friends, and both is right. It's just a question of style. But you have a large window to play with. Whereas for Cabernet Franc, you're always on the verge of being green, and then you have 2 or 3 days to pick it when it's not green anymore until it's rotten. Right. So in terms of daily management, it's a very demanding grape variety. But when you are on clay or limestone with constant water supply, when water doesn't stagnate in your soil, when drought is never too severe, so in other words, when the Cabernet Franc doesn't block out, when it goes to proper core ripening, it provides 2 things that no other grape variety can provide. It provides a lot of flower and mintiness in the nose. That's how you recognize it. Like little shy flowers, so delicate. You're not talking about the big rose jumping at you, but small buds and a touch of lilac, but not too much. It's a very discreet and delicate flower aromatic perimeter or family. And in the mouth, it provides a little bit of tannins, a little bit more than Cabernet Sauvignon, for example. So that's why we have to be very cautious about the tannic ripeness, the phenolic ripeness. We know that they're going to provide a lot of tannins, so they got to be ripe. Because Cheval Blanc has this in particular. Okay, it's a first growth, it's very poor soil, very demanding wines, highly concentrated with almost unlimited aging expectation. But it's never tannic. It doesn't give you the tannic feeling. Even in a dry vintage like 2020, it's still velvety and sweet. It has a lot of silkiness. And one of the reasons for that is the clay and our dedication to the ripeness of a Cabernet Franc, and also our fear to extract it too much. So once it's ripe, you still have another hurdle to jump over, which is the level of extraction. If you do one pumping over that you shouldn't have done, you waste it. You waste it because it's too tannic.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, Cabernet Franc is my favorite grape, actually. I'm a big fan, but yeah, it's one of those grapes where if it's not done right, the greenness in the glass is just it's too much to take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on or off. But to be frank, when we are lucky enough to taste vintages from the 60s, the 70s, we didn't have the same weather conditions. And if global warming was stopping right now and keeping these weather conditions forever, it would be a blessing for us. Because we are in Bordeaux and we grow Cabernet Franc. So 30 years ago, our fight was ripen them properly. Now our fight is ripen them, but not too quickly, not too much. It's completely different. But Cabernet Franc ripens now almost every year to the core, whereas 30 years ago, one vintage out of 2 was a little bit green. And we were lucky enough to have people who loved this just hint of herbaceousness. But nowadays, we also are happy to have banned it completely. And we know that the wines will age with charm and with a lot of sensuality, thanks to this grace variety.
Okay. All right. So we are coming up to the hour, which means that for all of you watching or listening on our public streams on X or on YouTube, we are going to shortly end this stream and then head over to a private Q&A, which is for Club dVIN members only, where we're going to do questions and answers with Arnaud. But before we do that, the reason that Arnaud is sipping on a 2020 Cheval Blanc right now is not only because it's fantastic, I'm sure, though I'm not drinking the same wine. I wish I was. It is because tomorrow we are releasing for our members that very same wine. So in 1 minute, Arnaud, can you tell me what makes Cheval Blanc 2020 special to drink and to hold?
Yes. 2020 in Bordeaux is a radical and extreme vintage. It's the driest we ever had, we ever measured and registered in the century. And it's among the warmest. But all of the water we got it in the spring. So it's a vintage with a lot of contrast between the spring, which was very mild, giving us pain with mildew, for example, and then in July and August, absolutely no rain. So it's among these vintages with this kind of paradox, and that's where the clay I was telling you about is entering the field with a lot of use and as a great asset for us, because it retains the water and releases it in dry months of summer. So as a vintage, it's a vintage that sort of dodges the complexity of the weather conditions for us. And we are very proud of this vintage weather. During the summer, we were very frightened. It was frighteningly dry and warm. But when you drink this wine, it's only 5 years old. So normally, nobody drinks a Cheval Blanc that is 5 years old. Yeah. And neither do I. I probably never had this wine since the en-primeur tastings. So it's a sort of new meeting between the two of us. But I'm surprised because I had the memory of a Cheval Blanc with a large power capacity, a very bold, black fruity, quite ripe, and solid and self-confident kind of wine. And now it's only 5 years old. Of course, it doesn't deliver what it will deliver in 20 or 30 years, but still, it's charming. It's approachable. That's the beauty of Cheval Blanc. Many wines from 2020 might not be drinkable today. Cheval Blanc is. So my advice is, if you have 12 bottles of this, drink one now. Don't let it go. Drink it now to meet this wine as a teenager, as an early vintage, and keep the rest. If you only have one bottle, don't drink it now. I mean, keep it, because it will deliver so much more in the next decades.
And when would you say would be the perfect moment if you only had one bottle? How long would you hold it?
Probably 15, 20 years. Until this is a stage where I like the wines. I have a sweet spot for old wines, 30, 40 years old when I get lucky. But at 15 or 20 years, you start to leave the stage of young wines and you start to gather the first notes which only time can give. A little bit of dry leaf, a little bit of tree skin, a touch of blonde tobacco, pipe tobacco, very mild, very sweet. And it's a stage that I do love. So for people who have more wine or who are more patient, please be my guest in 40 years. But if you're not that patient, I would advise like 15, 20.
Good advice. Very good advice. Okay. So Arnaud, thank you very, very much. I know that you've got the link to head over and chat with our members. I will close it off here. Really, really appreciate you taking the time. And I'm going to talk to you in a couple of minutes on our private Zoom. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jana. Thanks, everybody.
All right. And for those of you still listening or watching, this has been another Great Wine Wednesday. Next week, we are going to take a little break and we'll see you the week after. The reason that we're doing that is because we are going to be in Bhutan again next week for our next trip. This is going to be the first ever barrel tasting of wines produced in Bhutan. We had last year, we had a trip where we did the very first commercial harvest. That was very exciting. The year before that, we harvested kind of a test harvest, I would say, and we produced from that the very first barrel of wine. And so, yeah, this is going to be a big trip. Rodolfo's heading over on Friday this week, and he's going to be leading a group of, I think, around 16 people through the Himalayas. So really looking forward to that. And then we're going to be in Delhi doing a blind tasting together with Real Vision's RVIP community. So we are going to be taking a break next week from Wine Wednesday, but we will see you the week after as usual. And those of you who are not yet members of Club dVIN and are interested in becoming a member, please head over to clubdvin.com. Applications are open. And those of you who are members, you know the access that you get and the weekly wine drops that we do. Tomorrow, we are releasing the 2020 Cheval Blanc. If you've got the patience to wait 15 to 20 years to drink it, like Arnaud suggests, then you are stronger than me. But if you get your hands on 12 bottles, well, then you're very, very lucky. And I mean, yeah, then you got to invite me over too. All right, guys, thank you so much. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks on Wednesday.